Hey everybody, thank you for joining the Move Podcast. I'm your host, Scotty Carlisle, and today we have a special guest that I'm talking about a lot that has been very successful in family and in work. Is there anything you're trying to do with what you're trying to do, accomplish at the county?
Well, there's a lot of things we're trying to do. My district alone, there's things such as the fentanyl. That's become such a highly controversial and very charged issue with fentanyl. And Riverside County, for the first time, had a case to where the person who sold it went to trial for second-degree murder. They're trying to let people know it's to pass fentanyl without people knowing what's really in it. So they take the fentanyl and put it into the drugs, and they sell the drugs. So who's responsible when someone dies?
The person that sold.
So our DA Hestrin, was the first to take lead on charging for the death of those that have died because of fentanyl, and going back to tracing who they received the drugs from.
My little sister passed away. I don't know if you...
Oh.
So, before Sage was born, 9 months before Sage was born, my little brother passed away. That's why I started my Unsung Hero Foundation, because I created that thing for the TLC award, which was my way of coping and to try to...
I remember.
Yeah. And then, fast forward... a year, 2 years. So December 3rd is when it happened. The same day my dad passed away, which is really screwed up, man. But when she passed away, she was 34 years old, and there was no semblance of any reason why it happened. And so my first thing was fentanyl, because I heard about all of the Xanax, how it was getting put in Xanax.
Mm-hmm.
People are taking Xanax everywhere, and so I'm like that. So they did a what's it called, for the drug screening or whatever, and nope, it wasn't fentanyl. But that was my first response. And then I had her phone, and I was going through her phone, and the person that lived underneath her, because she lived in an apartment complex, was giving her Xanax. So I was like, but Serena would be like, hey, do you have a couple? And she'd be like, okay, I just got my prescription, but I'll give you a couple, kind of thing. So, but being that it's my sister and she is no longer with us, the emotion of like, right? And,
sure.
And it's like, so I understand that's from the people that have lost loved ones, there needs to be, they want somebody to answer for that loss. So.
But if you don't hold people accountable for doing bad things, those bad things will only escalate. And that's why we're moving forward and charging. And we're no longer out there by ourselves. There are counties all over the United States that are starting to take this seriously and saying, you know what, this is unbeknownst to those youth, those adults, whoever it is. They're given some drugs, and it's laced with it. So they have no idea. And that's why it becomes where it's murder. Not an overdose. There's a difference between an overdose and murder.
Overdose is obviously how does that work? That's a interesting debate.
It is. But overdose, you are utilizing some drugs, and you have taken more than your body can handle. But you know what you're taking. When you don't know what you're taking and it's laced with something, that's murder.
Oof.
So overdose versus murder. And the Faces of Fentanyl, we did a whole campaign, we're still doing it, in the county, and it actually won an Emmy for their video. And it talks about it's not just one group. You can't categorize those that are utilizing and dying from fentanyl. It's all ages. It's a baby died because the parents had on their hands and the baby, yeah, okay. There was a person who gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and a father gave mouth-to-mouth to the daughter.
Oh my God.
The daughter lived, the father died. There's all kinds of things. You can't, that's what I'm saying. This has gotten out of hand, and people don't realize the magnitude this has escalated to.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That, oh my God.
It is so deadly. Your talking is so small that you have no idea. It just takes such a small amount.
So, I guess being in that spot over at Riverside County, you probably see a lot more than, because it's the whole county as opposed to when you were in Corona, right?
Sure.
Is that?
But you still hear about it all over too. I mean, my district's one district. There's 5 of them, but we hear it, and you hear it. If people pay attention, it's out there. The information's been out there, and that's why we did a big campaign from billboards and social media.
I can see how it would be really hard though, because again, I'm looking back at my own childhood. So my brother, he was a troubled soul, you know, but he had issues. He was actually molested when he was a little kid, and I had just joined the Army, and I was gone, and he was 6 to 7 years old, and then things happened, and then for a year, and then after that, when I found out about it, the person that did it was already in jail, and that started a chain of events in his life that he was just a very angry soul.
Sure.
And so crime, drugs, violence, gangs, he did it all with both of his middle fingers up. And so, but eventually he ended up turning his life around. But in the meantime, when you have a lot of people that are rebels or that are just dealing with issues in life, and their way of dealing with it is rebelling and going out there, and like those people you can't really get to, because no matter what you say or however you try to interact with them, so you got a real problem, and I don't know like any real solutions.
People have to choose to want help. I mean, that's in any type of behavioral mental health issues. I mean, that's the same problem we're having with homeless. You know, we have an escalating number of homeless, and with California laws that limit our hands on what we can do, it's very challenging. And you see the face of homeless, what do you think of?
Drugs, mental...
People talking to themselves, they're not clean. You know, that's the look of homelessness. But the hundreds of kids that are living in cars or living, you know, place to place. I mean, those are the homeless that I work hard to reach to, because they're in situations by no choice of their own. Whether it's circumstances the family has experienced or bad parenting, whatever it is, we have to help those kids. That we have to give them a second chance. And we do better with those. We do better with veterans, because you have to get wraparound services. You can give somebody a house to live in, but if you don't give them services to help them through some of their issues, behavioral health, mental health, whatever it is, they can't really stabilize. And if you give them only wraparound services without a stable place to live, they're not going to be as successful. So our goal is to offer wraparound services, and we have different projects going on throughout the county. Other counties do too, because we're understanding is that people have to choose to want to help. They have to choose that they want help. They want their children. Families are the critical aspect of our country. And some of these folks, which is the face that people think are the homeless, and they're scary, and they're defecating on businesses, and all the horrible stories you hear, but that's not the only homeless. That's the handful, or I don't know the percentage, I don't want to misquote.
Right.
But we can help the families and the children and veterans.
So when I was in 8th grade, I was in Wilcox, Arizona, one stoplight town. 8th grade, that I was related to most everybody. Then I moved to Tucson, Arizona, to Southside, and it was all, you know, the rough and tumble area, and I went from the majority to a minority. To a minority that people did not have nice feelings for. So I ended up getting into a bunch of fights, and then very shortly thereafter, my mom and my dad had split up, and we ended up going into a shelter for domestic abuse, and it was me and my mom and my 5, 3, and 1-year-old siblings, who one of my sisters here now actually visiting me from Tucson. But we were homeless. And we went to a shelter, and there was a shelter called the Brewster Center that they had consultants that were on staff, like young college kids that I could relate to, and I met a buddy for life that was there doing time with me, and it was I didn't know it at the time, but it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot, the fact that there were resources there
that you can relate to.
That I can relate to. And so I have a soft spot for that. But also, now flip the script, when Santa Rosa almost burnt down, but a big part of it did. So I have my unsung hero, and I was doing this test. What if I go there without money or without an idea? I just want to help. Where could I end up? I went there, met a bunch of interesting people. One of the guys, his house burnt down, but he was a retired fire captain, and he came and he recorded all of it. So he's driving in while Santa Rosa's on fire. Walmart's on fire. Wow. He's driving down the road recording everything. He gets to his house. His house burned down. The gas line is going fire, and he's like, this is my house. And then he saved somebody else's house. He gave me all that footage. I have all of that footage.
Oh, wow.
Then, because of my unsung hero, he saved this one house that he had on camera, and then he called me and he said, hey, I haven't told that guy that I saved his house. I haven't told him that I saved his house. No, do you want to be there when I tell him that? I said, hell yeah. And so I flew back up there, and then I recorded him telling the guy that he saved his house. Okay, but that's just part of the story. But the reason I'm telling you is because he had a lot of run-ins with homeless, being a fire person, and he was very angry because what he was saying is that when somebody calls a fire truck or a person, they have to stay there until that person is okay. So he had an issue where somebody didn't want to be cold, and they got drunk and they laid on the sidewalk. Somebody called because nobody wants to talk to them, and the guy was acting like he was bad, and he was there. A block or two away from him, there was a car accident, and a little girl basically ended up dying. Oh. And he could not go there had he gone there. And so he has this, right? And then he's talking about, don't ever give somebody alcohol, because then they're doing this. And we see on this side where they defecate in the houses, where they pee in the streets. And so you really do have a huge array of and then you have, again, the mental health, and so it is a very complicated issue. But so I don't.
It is.
Yeah, I'm not jealous of you having to deal with that, because that's a lot, and so I don't know. It's like there's not a real solid answer.
Well, you have to start focusing on what your main goal is, and as I always said, it's women and children, or families. So when they have the kids, and you focus on that. And the other thing is public safety. The Santa Ana River bottom has been so utilized by homeless, and it's not safe during fire time, rains, it floods, we have to evacuate. And what happens is they're being obstinate and not wanting to leave. Now you put our law enforcement fire personnel in jeopardy. And that's when I start getting angry. And so we've worked, when I first came into office, put together a homeless collaborative for our district. So it's District 2. And it's not just the cities. It takes a collaboration. It's true when I'm talking about the fentanyl, it's true in anything we do. You work better when there's more people. You work better in numbers. And so we had representatives from every city. I tried to get elected officials, so we have elected officials involved. You have all your county parks, or county departments parks, emergency services, or CAL FIRE, Riverside County Fire. You have our sheriff department. You have our flood control. I mean, all the different departments that affect down there at the river bottom. And then you have you're outside. You have Army Corps of Engineers because they're right along the river bottom. You have Fish and Wildlife. People have no idea the extent of a number of parties that have authority over the river bottom. So we come together on a monthly basis and talk about the issues, and some things have really grown from that. And we're working hard. I've put some money towards cleanups. It's just been very positive. It's not where we would like to be. We'd like to be much further along. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of dollars, and it takes cooperation. For example, I do the annual point-in-time count, and that happens in January for our county. And you're taking a snapshot, one moment in time. We take it one day, and it's early morning, and we go around and we try and count the homeless. And they are not cooperative. In fact, I went to a site and the generators are running, and people were just there and they're all gone.
Oh, wow.
So we can't count them. And what people don't understand, that's how we get some of our funding. One of our sources of funding is by how many people do we have in our county. It goes along with the census that happens every 10 years. When we do an annual, we're going to move it to every 2 years, a count of homeless. How do you know you're even doing any better or not? And so if we do an annual count of homeless, and then we can see how it compares to the year before. So, but the census funding comes from that. That census that happens every 10 years, there's a lot of outcome from that. And that's how you get federal and state funding. It's all about numbers. How do you, when you get so many residents, you've got to get fair funding.
Right.
So people don't understand the bigger picture, little things that affect not right here and now, but the long-term effect and what it can do for you or how it hurt you.
I think that is a major disconnect with a lot of people, and then the way that they look at their county or the elected officials, because they see something, they feel it because they're being affected by it, and they're pissed off and they feel the emotion, and then they're like, fix this, but then you're like, okay, I want to fix that, but hold on a second, and then you have 15 things that you have to put in a puzzle in line in order for this thing to go through. So
people don't contact us generally unless there's a problem. And of course their information is not always totally accurate. Sometimes it is. I'm not going to say everybody's wrong. So we try and figure out what the issue really is, and then it takes sometimes several departments to help somebody with an issue. And it's that big picture stuff that people have a hard time with. And government runs slow. Well, that's because there's a lot of people. And no problem really happens overnight. It has taken a long time of things going on and repeating and escalating. And then when it escalates to the point that you're so frustrated, you call us and we're supposed to fix it in one day. Yet it took a very long time. I want things fixed. There's no question. And some things you can, if there's a problem in the planning department or problem here, we can help intervene and see how we can fix it. But these long, big problems, transportation, why are there so much cars on our freeway? Well, our freeway standards are so far behind because they just are. Funding is short, and we have to compete for a lot of dollars. And then you have Sacramento. Our governor right now says no more expanding on freeways. Yeah, no more cement. Can't expand. Makes it challenging because in the same breath he's saying we have to build more houses. And more houses bring people.
How do you reconcile that? Because you have builders, businessmen that are in your area that's what they do, and you're in essence having to limit their ability to earn a living and do whatever because of mandate. Is it a mandate? Is that what comes down?
Yes,
or how is it?
We do a regional assessment from RENA numbers, and they determine from what's in each city, each unincorporated area, and they give a number. It's done through a process through our SCAG, which is Southern California Association of Governments. That's our metropolitan area. and we work together, and the numbers come, and then the state ups and downs it, okays it, whatever they want to do. And so that's the number that we have to work towards meeting. And they're very high numbers. Some of us have much higher numbers than we feel is appropriate, but it's another story. And then there's some that have, doing well. It just depends on the area. But you look at how in Southern California, we like sprawl. That's what the governor doesn't like that. And many people in Northern California, because they go up, they don't like sprawl, we waste land. So people sprawl, and what happens is, it starts with, say, Orange County and LA. They're getting close to being built out, and very expensive, so people move east.
Yes.
And so Corona was one of the first cities, because it's the next city over from Orange County. The population grew tremendously. It was less dollars for a house, so they get more for their buck. The reality, what happens is, people don't understand it because people want to be paid more. Well, I don't want to, if you don't want me to commute, then you got to pay me more money. Well, that's your choice, because what happens is the cost of a house and the cost of living has a direct correlation with the pay scales in those areas. Mm-hmm. Well, think about it. You're going to pay people less money if it doesn't cost as much to live there. So they're wanting us to match the Orange County LA
pay scale, but
want to keep the lower
standard.
Correct. Not standard of living, but cost of living.
Cost.
There's a difference.
Right.
And so a lot of people leave California, sell their house for, say, $750,000, can go to Texas or some other state and get it for under $500,000 or less. Some of them go to Idaho or whatever, and they pay significantly less. But they're going there usually on retirement or something else.
Right. I know.
So,
there's been a lot, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's just trying to explain to people there's more to the picture. It's not just government always trying to mess people up.
Right.
There's a whole explanation, whether people want to hear it or not, or believe it or not.
I feel like there's sometimes, maybe if there's differences of personalities, sometimes people can rub you the wrong way.
Oh, sure.
And then if that's the case, and if somebody's basically calling me a liar or saying that I'm meaning harm or that or he's taking an agenda or I'm saying this and he's spinning it to make it look like this, I would not have any desire to help somebody like that in any way. And I would, so I would imagine that there are sometimes those kind of scenarios, but also on the other side, most of the time there's a lot of, you're working with government employees and there are a lot of things and things take time and
well, I understand they're people, so they all make minor things that could have been done better, and we evaluate when there's something that could have gone better. You evaluate and you restructure and you rethink it. But it's true. It's just a matter of owning there's a problem, whether you are part of it, created it, or whatever, and then wanting to fix that. And in my position, it doesn't matter whether I like you or not. My job, I was hired to do what I can for all my constituents, whether you voted for me or not. And that's an important thing that every elected official has to remember that.
That'll definitely be a good soundbite. Because but agreed. I agree. I think that's the right way to look at it.
It has to be.
So how has, you just told me before, I don't know if we were recording at that point or not, but you told me before you started into the political schema that you were a counselor for troubled youth.
I worked, I got my MFT, Marriage Family Therapist, and I focused on families of at-risk youth. And I worked between juvenile hall and placement facilities, and so did work with families. And I did that until I got married. And my husband lived in Corona all his life and had a family business, and so it was either Spiegel or nothing, and Corona or nothing. So I'm here in Corona with the name Spiegel. So have no regrets. But then I ran the electrical contracting business with my husband. So we did that for another day.
Electrical contracting.
Yes.
My brother had an electrical contracting company. So.
Yeah, and we were a union shop, so learned a lot about unions. My family wasn't part of unions. And then we closed it. My mother-in-law passed away, and we closed the business a few years after that.
Okay, so before I forget, how did dealing with at-risk youth, what skills or knowledge did you gain from that helps you today?
Listening. Part of the problem with our youth is they don't feel we listen. My kids said, Mom, think of how many times you said, Mom, you're not listening. You don't hear me. Well, there's a difference between listening and hearing. Because listening is, I am listening to you. They feel hearing them is by doing what they want. You didn't hear me. This is what I want. Well, I listened to you, and we may not agree on what you want as being the appropriate thing for the situation. And so working with people is that you need to be where they're at. And I don't like the word levels, because people say, oh, get down to their level. No, it's being where they're at and understanding where they're at. And you can't do that unless you listen to where they're at. And so I think that's the most important aspect in anything. And you could carry that into whatever field you're in. Almost everything we do has some type of interaction with others. And if we learn to interact with people you don't think you like, sometimes once you start interacting, you realize they're not so bad. How many people have you had that?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, because part of our programming is we're supposed to be judgmental. We're supposed to predict of, threats. And we see things and we judge people. That's what we do. And so many times we're off. We're off. And then you realize once you see somebody that is acting in a way that you disagree with. But when you talk to them and you have an in-depth conversation, a lot of times you'll realize they're doing that
because of this.
Yes.
Now, that's not excusing their behavior, and we just need to give them different tools to learn to release some of that anger or frustration or whatever it is, sadness, depression. And it's learning that you keep talking. And quite often people shut down too, so it's very challenging. It really is. It's just about having a conversation, open and honest, and not being judgmental. It's maybe not something I would do, but that doesn't make it wrong per se for them. So we have to be careful on that part of life.
Right. So we had a podcast, and the girl that I was talking to came from a very conservative background in Orange County, and this was in 2009, and it was with the whole cannabis thing, and her dad didn't talk to her for 6 months because her dad was like, no, this is drugs, this is bad, it's wrong. Yeah. Until he ended up coming to the doctor one time and then had a connection with his grandkid, and then he had to leave. And then a week later he calls her and he says, you know what, I didn't realize, and now I understand the context. And then from that point forward, he was a different man, is what she said. And so I think that's a lot with a lot of people when they give somebody a chance and try to, like you said, listen to see where they're coming from. It gives you a lot. If people would do that with the Republican and Democrat stuff, oh my so polarized. Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
It's getting worse.
It is.
This pendulum has just swung, and people just don't listen anymore. They make up their own stories. You listen to the news. News has so much influence today.
On both sides, because on one, you have somebody that listens to it and is that is affected, influenced by what they say. And then you have people that are like, every dang thing they say is a lie. So they're influenced completely in a different direction. So, and now you got AI that's involved, right? So
that's, to me, I have the least understanding of that. And the little bit I know, it's very scary to me.
It's scary to me as well.
Just like you go looking for something, and the next thing you know, you're getting all these ads on that thing you were looking at.
Yep. I see it from a way of, right now, everybody's addicted to their phone, right? And it's that whole dopamine release, right? And it's like you're in a casino and you're pulling the thing, but as you're scrolling, then boom, you hit something that you really like. You're like, whoa, and it hits you in a certain way. And so it's kind of like that every time you scroll. Well, and it gets you that little dopamine hit. Well, that has been driven by people. Now that it's going to be, or being driven by AI, it will understand us a lot deeper, and that's why I'm scared. I'm afraid that we're going to become so addicted to our phones that I don't even know what's going to happen with that. We're so influenced, right? Because when we're connected, it's like we're being programmed. We're being programmed. We are being programmed regardless of,
That's true.
Yeah. I don't know, this is kind of a side thing, but I went on this journey of, I want to read all of the religious books, right? So I started with the Hebrew Bible, and then I went to the Quran because I want to know what Muslims are thinking, right? And then it was the Book of Mormon, and I've been raised a Christian, so the whole New Testament. And so it was interesting. I ended up having a nightmare because all of them kind of like melded in together, and then I was like, ooh, I gotta take a break because I'm being programmed. Like, whoa, my brain is being programmed, and I'm acting like, okay, this is no big deal. I can take in all this information and I'll put it on the shelf because I don't really believe that. Okay, that doesn't make sense. I'll put it over here. Oh no, it doesn't work that way. When I dreamt at night, everything that I had put on the shelf came right back up and scared the bejesus out of me. So anyway, it was but we're being programmed with what we allow into our mind. When the content that we consume, that we decide to consume, will affect us regardless of how smart you think you are. That's what I found. But anyway, so I guess the other thing that I wanted to bring up is I mean, you want to talk about the Change the World app? What did you think about that?
I'm very familiar with Simple Acts of Care and Kindness, as you know. That's how we knew each other first. I think there's so much value to starting at a younger age. They're more influential. You can really connect and impact them and their thinking. But 1 year and one conference is not enough. We have to have the repetitive. You have to have some support. You have to, some of the schools, that's why we did some of the school stuff on trying to have them do projects that are simple acts of care and kindness. How are we doing anti-bullying? How are we giving our children some boundaries of what's appropriate and not? And that's what the conference used to do, was to show the boundaries. I mean, some of the things of, putting on the glasses, this is how one child may see, or inability to walk properly. Because kids don't understand, and adults, that people may be different, but they're still wonderful, loving individuals, that they just have a disability. They have whatever it is. And so we're learning to say to accept them as they are. And that's what really it's about. And this anti-bullying, all you're doing is hopefully saying that bullies are not okay. And don't give them the power. And that's what happens. Somebody's a bully, we give them the power because we don't want to deal with them. But if you notice, as we get older, some people do stand up to bullies, or we ignore them, or we quit.
Yep.
And so we need to kind of learn to minimize that as we get older. And you can't by not continuing that thought process and introducing different things into their lives that help them work together with others, whether you like them or not.
And also, on the bully side of the house, some of those bullies are acting out, and they're acting in that way because they're not getting the proper attention at home or wherever it is. So they act out because they're going to get that attention. So by providing them another avenue of ways to create actions, you could potentially take some bullies out of the market. That's how I'm looking at my own situation as I grew up, and I was a hyperactive little kid. I'm a hyperactive adult. I know, so you don't say, but I was, and then you add a little bit of anger and emotional instability in that whole equation, and yeah, you got kids that are jerks. So this could be something that points them in a direction of being positive. And then because of those same kids and the emotional instability and they, I believe, could have an even bigger impact.
With children, with anybody, but let's focus on the children. You can't send them to a therapist or a counselor and send them back to the same environment without introducing how we can change that environment. They're angry, there's something going on, and this is why I'm strong into families, or their living situation. Where are they? Because like you said, they're angry. What are they angry about? And our teachers don't have time with 30 plus kids in their class to find out why this kid's in. And they need to have those school counselors to help peel back all those intricacies about that child and working through that anger and getting the help that they need and pulling the families in. Because when I was telling you earlier about working with our at-risk youth, they were wards of the court, some of them. Some of them were taken out of their parents' homes. They were sent away to be fixed up. Same thing in prison. You can send somebody away for a certain period of time, but if you don't make changes as they're gone and back into the environment and work with them as they go back into that same environment, you're going back to the same situation that created the problem in the first place. So you really have to work through and as a family unit and involve them. And that's what the challenge is we don't spend enough time working through peeling back all those challenges and finding out what is that real core issue.
Well, there's so many different ways that we're screwing up that we can screw it up worse, but I don't know. I feel like this could be a proactive way of nudging it in the right direction.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting. So I hadn't thought about it from that perspective with the family, but that's such a key, integral, core part of success. If you don't have that, you can have the greatest idea, and it doesn't matter because it's not gonna get any traction.
Well, not all families are that way. Understand, there are children that come from a very dysfunctional family that end up successful. So you can't label anybody.
Right. Okay. Success is just like beauty in the eye of the beholder. Right.
But what I'm saying is not everybody because they had a dysfunctional family is going to end up not being successful.
Right.
So we have to be careful on those statements. But
yeah.
But we can help them. But they find some other defense mechanisms that helps them go through the rest of their life until they're out on their own.
Yeah.
You find coping mechanisms that how you're going to get through, mom and dad fighting and yelling, or this happening and this happening. The best would be to get them together to work through that. But those kids that become bullies are further along in their process of anger,
mm-hmm.
and you have to really work with them.
Yeah. Well, you can say that from experience. Was there ever anyone that you just couldn't reach?
Of course. And that's why you need a team, because sometimes I just couldn't get on that same level, that same being where they're at, whether I didn't understand, they weren't accepting of me. There's always different reasons. I couldn't say there's any one continued commonality in it, but it just happens. And professionals have to be able to say, okay, I have a block, I've hit a wall, can you reach out? And so you work with others.
Teamwork makes the dream work,
yeah.
Right?
And we did a lot of group therapy. Because sometimes a kid will open up, he or she, when they realize somebody else is going through some of the same stuff. You only know what you know. And when you talk about abuse in a household, that's what that child feels happens everywhere. And so they become accustomed to it and think that that's what it is. They don't know any different. That it's not okay to be spanked or hit or to the level that they're talking about. Everybody has their own way of parenting, and I'm not going to criticize anybody, but when parenting becomes abuse, there's that fine line. And But if a child doesn't know it's not okay, then that's what. And then when you talk about the cycle of domestic violence and trying to break that cycle, it's them to realize, particularly young girls, that it's a mom being abused their entire life, or yelled at and just yelled at and made feel horrible, and you have to understand that that's what she understands, and she gravitates towards that same kind of relationship. So you got to break that cycle.
Man, that is also another opportunity that could really make a positive impact. If you could figure out a way to break that cycle, or have the understanding of the kid that sees that right. is not correct. That's not
There's
the way.
There's a lot of good programs to do, and I was involved with many of them.
Okay, so you just went to Israel.
Mm-hmm. 4 generations of my family. We took my mom. She went, and she turned 83 on the trip. And my grandson, and then 4 of my 5 children went, and my husband and I. And then we had 2 friends that were the first week with us.
And it was that. Have you been there many times? Or?
All my family. My daughter's girlfriend hadn't been there before, so she was the only one out of 11 of us that had not been there before. And this trip was much different. Previously, if you go on a tour, you set your tour and you say, if you have family that live there, hey, we're going to be here, come meet us. My daughter put this trip together with family in Israel, and we built it around the family so that we were in all the places where family was.
Oh, cool.
And so the tours and everything were customized for us, and family members took them on many of them. So it was really, we had a van, we rented a van for the whole trip.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So my biggest experience from Israel when I came back that blew my mind was the food.
It's different.
Ellie, he's like my brother, especially after he came back from Israel when I went to, now we're definitely like brothers, but he would always say, oh, the food is so good, and I'm like, yeah, you're from there, of course you're going to think the food is better, whatever. But so in my mind, I wrote him off when he would say that. The food is better. The food is better. And it's because, I don't know if it's because of where it's grown, but like watermelon, for example. I love watermelon. The watermelon in Israel, I swear, tasted better. It was like all of the taste buds in your mouth were just like doing backflips and like, wow, this is so good. I think that's where religion came from, because you're like, oh my God, this is so good, that you have to be like, think something. Oh God, no, I'm just kidding. But the food was amazing. Okay, what do you think about? Is it, if you had to compare?
We have a much bigger variety. We just don't have very many places to say, let's go out for Israeli food. There isn't. You can go to L.A., but you have every other culture of food.
Yeah.
So we have a larger variety of food, whether you want traditional American or barbecue or Chinese, Japanese, sushi, Mexican. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, you have such a variety of food. Italian. So, and then you have Italian, and then you have American Italian. So it's hard to say it's better. It's just different. It's another element that we can experience, because food is an experience.
Right.
It's a necessity, obviously, but how we prepare it and how we eat it is the experience.
And I think for me, that I've always been out here, so over there, I think there's a lot more. In Europe, I haven't been to Europe except for like on a layover, but I feel like there's smaller meals that they eat, and like over here, you eat big lumps of everything, and Americans just eat a bunch of crap, basically, overall. And over there, it's more small size. I feel like in Israel, that there were, like, for example, the first family that we went to had a table, and there was probably 15 saucers of olives and this kind of salad and that kind of, and hummus, and that it was like, oh wow, this is like a bigger smorgasbord of a variety of things to eat.
And less processed food. We in America eat a lot of processed food.
That's true. And that's no good.
Nope. Some of us wear it well.
Yeah, some of us not so much, but you are so active. You have so many things that you are on boards of. Even when you were on the board of SAC and you would come in and you'd have like 15 things of the different boards and the different meetings and the different things that you were a part of that took a lot of time. And my question to you is, how do you balance all of that with family? Because you and Bobby, how long have you guys been married now?
38 years.
So that is no small accomplishment. That is something that, regardless of anything else, I think is amazing. It makes you a role model. And I want to know how you do that.
First off, you have to set priorities. What are your priorities in life? For me, mine in order, God, family, and my job. And every once in a while, things get out of order. Job sometimes tries to sneak up, but when it does, it's got to be temporary. And then you have to bring back into priority. My family has got to be my first priority in terms of the day-to-day stuff. God is spiritual. I mean, it lives in my life. And I'm very much involved in my congregation still, all these years. And my kids are. But family is going to be there long after the job's gone. And you don't want to burn your bridges with friends and family and not make sure you covered that the whole time. And my most important thing is you got to like what you're doing. And if you don't like it, you need to move on. And I tell that to elected officials too. If you're not enjoying it, let somebody who wants to have a chance to enjoy it. It's hard work. You run into a lot of people you sometimes have conflict with, but there's a lot of wonderful people out there that support you and keep you going. And I think that's really is. You've got to look for the good stuff, not focus on the bad stuff. If I did that, I would be out. But you focus on the good, and every day you try and make change, make good, make a difference. Very simple.
Simple, but I would imagine not easy, because again, you have to reconcile. Maybe you have to reconcile a lot of where you are. Mm-hmm. Keep a notice of, because sometimes I think it's easy for the job to slip up and not, and so you have to have some kind of a checkpoint or accountability that
your family will let you know. So that means you got to listen to them. I try not to miss many family things, and I have to. Lil, who you met on the phone, Lil, she will give me 2 or 3 things that go on at the same time, and we prioritize that. Okay, what is the most important? What's on my high priorities? And if I have 3 events in the same night, I'll put them in the priority, and if I get to them all, great. If I can't, the bottom ones that's not as high of a priority is what loses out. And so I do that in my work life the same as I do with my kids. But I tell people, don't burn those relationships, because they're going to be going on long after you're done with what you're doing over here.
That's probably pretty good advice.
Yeah. and as I said, you mess things up. We all mess things up. But don't let it go too long without cleaning it up. And people love when you recognize, hey, I messed up. There's nothing wrong with apologizing. In fact, I appreciate apologies, and I give them if I need to. And accepting you've done something wrong or something that upset somebody, sometimes it's not an apology. It's saying, hey, I understand this is not something you would like, but this is very important to me. Just own it. Or if you really screwed up, say, hey, I am so sorry. That was my mistake. I'm sorry that you felt that way. But people don't apologize. Own your behavior. And it feels so much better than wondering what they're thinking. Are they mad at me? I mean, how many times have you done that? You've said or done something, and then you're going to, well, what do I do? What do I say?
Yep.
Take that step forward.
and if you can do it here, then carry it over there. But that's why, in my eyes, you're successful on the job and the family. Because I mean, I don't think anybody can argue, like, objectively, not subjectively. Objectively, I think you've made it very. I think you've made it to be a very successful person. But you're consistent. The fact that, okay, so the Move podcast, and Move is the acronym, and make a difference in other people's lives. You check that box, right? O is offer up your time, talents, and gifts, and the fact that you are doing what you do and advocating and using your brain to help organizations achieve success. You check that box. V is to find victory in the small things. That just means that you are appreciative of things, which you are very appreciative. And E is encourage others. It's like every checkbox. So regardless of us talking about the Change the World app, because that's why you're here to talk about, or why you came over here, you know, or at least why Liliana got you over here. Regardless of that is my purpose, my focus of life, of who has moved, and if I can talk to them and extract their secrets of what's made them successful and how they look at life, and then somebody listening can be like, oh, you know what, and then it affects them and it helps. That to me is the way that I'm trying to move, right? And so this whole thing is about that. And you coming here has helped me to help you to help me, and help them. So it's like a win, yeah. And more of the wins down the line. So honestly, I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me.
Is there any messages that you'd like to throw out there, or if people want to contact you, or I don't know if that's,
Everything we talked about comes back to being comfortable with yourself. Nothing can be accomplished until you're comfortable with yourself, you like yourself, and learn to love yourself. And then everything else kind of starts happening around you, because you'll never get beyond that if you don't like who you are.
I think that's great. Thank you. Well, on that note, thank you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you on the flip side.